2, 1.
Welcome to Made for More Living.
One small step for man.
With Johnny Jennings.
Kick the tires and light the fires, Big Daddy.
The fastest and most exciting hour of news, events, and real estate in Northern California.
And this is a fact that was proved.
Powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Get ready. Here we go.
Welcome back to another show. We have a great lineup planned for you today. With us is Chad Francis with Thrive Stewardship. He's a 9-year veteran of the financial advisory industry, and he's going to talk to us specifically about, like, costs are going up, right, Chad? Everything's going up. Even the cost of egg, cost of gas, everything's rising.
Oh, it's a hot topic. Everyone's asking what's going on and why am I keep paying more for all the same stuff.
Yeah.
And I read so many great articles on it, went through a lot of great studies on it. So it's fun when I get to kind of break the bad news to people to go, well, it's not exactly what you think.
Yep, it's not exactly what you think. And so, but the number one question, like I'm always asked by people who have some income, that they've worked hard, they've saved up some money, and they're wondering, hey, what should I do with this money? So do you ever, I'm sure you get that question all the time, is that right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so what's, let's say somebody had $100,000, whether it's in, like, let's just say $100,000 cash. Like, it's saved up, they've worked hard, they have $100,000. What, in your opinion, should they do with that $100,000?
Pay your taxes first.
Pay your taxes. Nah, you can put it on a payment plan. You're good.
No, that's a great question. And yeah, it's one that comes up all the time, and you nailed it with the $100,000. It's a common amount where people go, I feel like I have too much sitting in cash. A good emergency fund is always something you want to have.
So how much is a good emergency fund?
There's a recommendation out there for, percentages or a multiplier. The common one you hear all the time, just because I'm endorsed by him as an investment advisor,
Yep.
You get the Dave Ramsey input on things. His advice is that 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And so when you're looking at that, yeah, you kind of just want to take your numbers and times it by 3, times it by 6 for your expenses. It's not your income, but what does it cost for you to get through the month and survive without suffering terribly?
And where should you put that 3 to 6 months of emergency funds? Where should that be? In mayonnaise jars in the backyard, or where should you put it?
Oh, yeah, you got to bury it in the dirt, keep it there for safety. But no, you're thinking about your savings account, you're thinking about checking, wherever it makes sense for you. But the best places you can keep it are places where it's actually doing something. So unfortunately, a lot of the big banks that are out there in your savings account, they're not paying great rates. You hear that interest rates are up and they should be paying wonderfully. Many of them aren't. And so if you think about some of that emergency fund, maybe that 1 month worth, keep that in your savings. It's there, it's liquid, it's easy to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of it, the other 2 to 5 months worth that you might be holding back with, go with something that's more high yield. You can find something great out there that's paying 5% right now, which is wonderful. Keeps ahead of inflation. You're actually making some money, but it's still FDIC insured. It's safe. You feel good about that. And when you need it and the rain comes, and it will in everyone's life in different seasons, you've got that money ready.
Okay, so it's there, but maybe just a little harder to access. That's why you keep the 1 month in like savings.
Yeah, so when something pops up and you got a little emergency, hey, no big deal. You move it over to checking, it takes 15 seconds. Mm-hmm. You go to that high yield option, yeah, maybe that's where your other 10, 15, 20,000 sitting, but it's going to take you a business day or two to get it moved over to your normal bank. So you don't want to have it all sitting over there, and something pops up, and they go, oh no, now I have a real emergency, because now it's also time.
Yeah, and be careful on the bank you pick, too. Tell you what, don't go with Wells. I'll say that on the air. Don't go with Wells. They shut down my bank accounts. They shut down all my accounts without notice. And I was freaking out. I thought I'd been hacked. I went in and...
Well, what were you doing? Were you misbehaving? Were you giving them attitude? What happened?
I was selling, some illicit drugs on the side, and apparently that's not... No, I wasn't doing anything. So this is what happened, is they said that my addresses weren't correct. And so on my business accounts, because I had a business and personal with Wells...
Sure.
They said my business addresses weren't updated, and I said, okay, great. I'm going to update them right now on this, the Secretary of State's website. I went back in 15 minutes later. I sat in the parking lot, updated it. Like, nope, we can't do this. By the way, all your other accounts are getting shut down too. I said, now what?
But do you realize why they were doing that? Don't you feel like they were doing that to protect you? Feeling like, hey, maybe his personal information is being compromised or hacked, and they're just making security measures. It's better safe than sorry.
You're such a nice guy.
The benefit.
I'm just trying to look at it from everybody's perspective.
I like the benefit of the doubt. So here's where I think I don't know what
the challenge. I will say this: the challenge though is getting it back. I'm okay with them shutting it down temporarily, but then the rigmarole and all the ordeal they have to go through to unlock it. Like, I still can't get my Venmo account unlocked. It's been locked for like 10 years, and they won't unlock it because of
I just Venmo'd you last week. That's not going to you.
I don't. So if you're trying to send money, or I go to certain events and they only take Venmo, I can't do it. They shut me down, and I can't get my Venmo account back.
Yeah, so what happened with me is they said the address was wrong. I fixed it. They said, okay, that's whatever. We're still shutting down your accounts, and you'll get a check in the next 15 business days.
Wow.
And they said, but we sent you lots of letters notifying you of this. I was like, you sent me letters to the address that you think is wrong, and that's why you're shutting down my bank account? And they said, yeah. And I was like, well, that's brilliant. And so what's funny about this whole situation is I updated my addresses on all the accounts to try and reverse this process. And then 15 business days later, I got letters from Wells Fargo saying, we're going to be shutting down your account. You need to update your address. The same day I got those letters was the same day I got more letters from Wells saying, hey, thank you for updating your bank account. And this is after they've already shut down my accounts. So those letters that they said they sent me, I had not received yet, and they shut it down. And so anyways, I went with a local bank, and then I was telling her my story, and she's like thinking, yeah, you were doing something shady. Like there's who would turn away, somebody that's current on everything, that has money in the bank.
You don't hear that very often where the bank is saying, here, take your money back. We don't want it.
Exactly.
Rarely do you hear that. That seems odd.
And so
hey, we're closing out your accounts. Take your money. We don't want it.
And so I'm telling her the story, and she's like, yeah, she's just not buying it. She's not buying it.
This is the local bank.
This is the local bank that's saying this now. Yeah, and I'm like, well, whatever. She can buy it or not buy it, but I'm opening an account here. And when Valerie went in, because we just had Ben. So Ben was just born. All our accounts are getting shut down. We have access to no money, no cash, except what we have in our wallets. And so it's super stressful. So then Valerie wasn't able to be there at the time we were creating the account because Ben was born literally 48 hours prior. And so she goes in to get added onto all the accounts, and the same rep is there, and she's saying, hey, you know what? I didn't really know what Johnny was talking about, but in just the last week, 5 other people have come from Wells saying that they did the same exact thing, like unannounced, and they just shut down their accounts. So I don't know what's going on over at Wells, but if you're banking with them, you might want to explore some other options. But we went way off in the deep end here. So let's say you have your emergency fund, 3 to 6 months saved up. Now, what should you do with that extra $100,000 that you're like, how would you recommend they invest that?
Sure. So when you're looking at that, it always comes back to, what's that money's purpose? What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? Are we doing things right by other savings accounts? Are we looking at your retirement accounts? If you're hitting all those marks, you're putting into retirement, you're doing this, you're doing that, you just got some extra money. Yeah, one of the best places right now, and still has always been, a good mutual fund that's exposed and taken part in the stock market.
Man, I thought you were going to say real estate.
We can go that way for sure, but just as a easy parking spot, because it's still liquid. You have a brokerage account. It's not tied to retirement if you're under age 60. It functions just like a savings account. You put money in, you take it out whenever you want. But in the meantime, it's sitting in something good that's growing that, some years are way up, some years are negative, like 2022.
Yeah.
But you look over a long period of time, last 100 years of the market, you're averaging 10, 11% in growth. So it's a great place to still be parking that money as long as that window of time is long enough to go with that growth.
Totally get it. And so I'm a big Grant Cardone fan. And, just a lot of the things that he has. So I've been following this guy for probably close to 10 years. And a lot of the things that he has said, I've implemented in my life and seen significant growth in those areas, whether it be business or personal or health. And when somebody comes to him with the $100,000 question, at least this is how he used to answer it, is he's like, hold on to it, right? I think Warren Buffett is the first rule of investing is don't lose money. Second rule of investing, refer to rule number 1, don't lose money. And so he's like, his thing is hold on to it, develop that financial muscle, that financial discipline to not spend the money, because so many people have a stack of cash and then think, oh, I have a stack of cash. I'm going to buy the stuff I've been delaying purchasing. And so what you're saying is in line with that is invest it in something, right? Don't spend the money.
Yeah, and even when you're investing, you haven't spent it.
Yes.
You've just transferred that wealth into a different asset that
Absolutely.
you still own. But here's the big thing, though. You're holding on to that cash. Make it real. Make it tangible. You're holding on to a $100 bill. Put it in your pocket for a year. You don't have $100 anymore.
No.
The world's gotten more expensive. Everything has increased. That 100 feels more like 97.
Yes.
Do it another year, now it feels like 94. You do it long enough, it starts losing real value.
Yeah, you got a $2 bill in your pocket.
There you go.
So yeah, totally makes sense. So if you have $100,000, it depends on where you are in life, is what I'm hearing. If you're closer to retirement age, then there's different options. If you're younger in life, there's different options. But essentially, and I like the what you added about the 3 to 6. Who cares if you have $100,000? If you do not have an emergency fund, that you don't really have the $100,000 because life happens. Yep. Tires get blown, cars need replacing, babies are born, weddings happen. So sometimes.
And sometimes you need that life check, because I've had that conversation where, hey, I have $100,000. What should we do? Great. Sounds good. Let's go with that. All $100,000. Well, hold on. How much is in your emergency fund? Well, that is my emergency fund. Okay, well, then we shouldn't do all of it. Let's go back to the board and calculate out how much should be set aside and then how much is going towards that new goal.
So just that you sidestep so many issues that people will run into by just going a little bit deeper and looking at the whole picture rather than just $100,000. That's experience talking. So if somebody wants to reach out to you and tap into some of that experience, what's the best way for them to contact you, Chad?
Lots of easy ways. There's always email. There's always phone. Going to thrivestewardship.com is one of the easiest ways because, hey, all the contact info's there. There's a schedule an appointment button right up at the top. Complimentary consultations.
Complimentary? You don't charge like $500 an hour like a lawyer?
No. I don't like doing that as a fiduciary advisor. We're all about best interest. I want to make sure we have a conversation first. Yep. You get to know me. You like me. You want to do business with me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to charge for that. It's a conversation.
There you go. So if you want that free consultation, just go to thrivestewardship.com. That's thrivestewardship.com. And after the break, we're going to talk about wealth building and how it has to do with real estate and a little thing called Financial Peace University. Back after this.
Selling your home doesn't have to be a stressful experience, especially when you work with Johnny Jennings and the Made for More Living team. Just Google Made for More Living. And when you do, you can type in your address and find out what kind of offers you would get on your home. Or how about this? How much you would get if you wanted a cash offer today from Johnny Jennings, no matter what kind of condition your home is in, no matter what kind of repairs are needed. Give him a try. There's a reason why he's number one in all of Sacramento. Johnny Jennings and the Made for More Living team. Just Google Made for More Living or go to madeformoreliving.com.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
In the last segment, we had Chad Francis with Thrive Stewardship on, and he was talking about if you had $100,000, how should you invest that? What should you do at different life cycles and stages of life? How would you spend that money? How would you invest it in your future?
Yeah, like what car dealership would you go to?
Mercedes, Porsche,
right? Tesla.
I mean, $100,000 is basically a Kia at this point. So
that is a vehicle not a good investment, Chad?
They just go down in value like a rock. That's where Chevy gets the tagline.
Right.
Like a rock. That's good, Chad.
And I can't take that joke. That's all Dave Ramsey, but I love repeating that one.
That's good. But let's take it a step further. Let's say you're planning for, like, you have children, mm-hmm. and you're wanting to help them so that way they have a better start in life, like jumpstart their success. Are you seeing parents more, or are you seeing invest in their kids' college education, or are you seeing them back off of that investment strategy right now?
Another great question. And so when you start looking at that, so much has changed in the last few years. And so it is very popular to be saving for college in a few different ways. Some folks don't love the avenue of saving for college in a college-specific account.
Because the money's locked in there if they don't go to college?
Exactly. And so if they don't go to college, they don't use it for those purposes, you really got to hit those rules in order to get that money back out.
If you don't hit the rules, are there tax consequences?
Yep, there can be tax consequences, penalties. So it's kind of like tapping into retirement accounts early.
Okay.
So you don't want to do it. So you really want to nail down that plan to go, we want to fund college. We don't want to overfund it. Depends on where the kid wants to go, because then that plan changes if they go to Sacramento State versus Berkeley. It's going to be a different price tag.
Oh, well, what if they decided they wanted to go to a trade school?
There you go.
Or get their real estate license.
There you go.
Some qualifications are hit there. So if you want to go to a trade school, you can see that being used with those college funds as long as that school is accredited and it hits the right check boxes. So that can still be used for things like that. But I would say the aggressiveness or that pace at which parents, grandparents, other family members want to be funding into college accounts drastically slowed down following COVID.
Really?
There was a lot of changes that people saw where they thought, my kid's going to school now on Zoom. What are we paying $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 a year for them to get a Zoom education when they should be going to class?
Yeah.
It left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And now that landscape has kind of changed, a lot of professionals in different arenas, including the parents, they look at education differently too. And so it's not necessarily this societal requirement to move on to higher education, but it certainly still has its value, of course, if you're studying something that's relevant, that can be used well in the marketplace, because it has to have a good purpose.
Yeah, so I went to college. I majored in history. I minored in political science.
Hey.
And I'm a real estate broker. Right? And so between getting the degree and ending up in real estate, I worked in the oil fields. So,
wow.
It's a very, it's a typical trajectory for a real estate agent, get your degree in history, work in the oil fields, and then go in. Valerie got her degree in nutrition. So she's an unregistered dietitian. And so, but she's a, broker in real estate as well. And so what I find interesting is that it seems, and correct me if you're seeing the same thing, Matt or Chad, but the emphasis used to be go to college. If you want to be successful, go to college. And now that narrative is starting to change a little bit. Like it's maybe be a welder, start your own business.
Sure.
Or look at other options outside of college.
Work at Chick-fil-A.
Work at Chick-fil-A. I mean, McDonald's is paying $20 an hour now. So
$20.
you can do $20 an hour at McDonald's. But to get a real estate agent's license right now is about $1,600 when you factor, and it's not a $1,600 like one time like upfront thing. It's $1,600 over maybe a year, between paying for the schooling, the background checks, and the association dues and all that. $1,600, and real estate agents, there's no cap on what an agent can earn, and we have friends, and Val and I work very hard, but our incomes outpace other people's significantly. Doctors, chiropractors, dentists, people who went to school and paid tens of thousands, in some instances hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get that degree. We'd paid, it was cheaper for us, but today it would be $1,600. So when somebody's looking to plan for their kid's future and they're trying to figure out, hey, should I put all the money in this education basket? You're seeing fewer people do that.
Yeah, it's slowed down quite a bit, and I think it was just kind of a change in that mindset. Like you were saying, it might not necessarily be a requirement now.
What are they pivoting to if they're not putting it in the for saving for school? What are they putting that money in instead?
So a shift can be done. You just think about it a little bit differently. You still want to save. You still want to set some money aside because, hey, if they go to college, great, let's still be prepared. But rather than a college-specific account, just a general investment account that's open. You can pop money into it anytime you like. And hey, if the kid goes to college, great. Use that money for that purpose. If they don't, great. You've got a pile of money and now you get to make a new decision.
So are these things like IRAs or Roth IRAs in the kid's name? Are they doing this, or is this thing in the parent's name solely?
A lot of the time it's just in the parent's name.
Okay.
So you can certainly go that route too. The child has to have some earned income. Quick example, you have a kid that participates in 4-H. Wonderful. Great life experiences. You're learning a lot. And they do something like take a pig to the show and they end up placing, they win some money, whatever it is. They make a couple $100. They have earned income.
Mm-hmm.
They can file a tax return. They can claim that. They're not going to have to pay taxes because it's too low. Great. Then you can pop that money into a Roth IRA for the kid. It's a great plan to get them started off on the right foot, just as one example. But where you're seeing that for the college accounts and a different way of achieving that goal. Yeah, a general investment account in the parent's name. It's like a joint account. Same way a husband and wife would hold like a bank account at a not Wells Fargo.
I don't know, Wells Fargo. Oh, gosh.
But when you start looking at those options, it just is a little bit more flexible. It doesn't have the same restrictions.
Okay, so there's still investment options if you're trying to plan for your kid's future, but you don't have to put all the eggs in that university basket.
100%.
And by the way, why should you? I mean, college is going to become free anyways. The government's going to pay for it also.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, there you go. Wow.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something? So anyway,
Mic drop.
Mic drop. Yeah.
But there's still a lot of merit to those college accounts. New rule changes that have been rolling out this year, in fact, you have more flexibility on those too. So you have a 529. It's a notorious college account that you can save for and invest. Great. If the child doesn't go to school, those funds don't get used for that purpose, you can, over time, the rules will continue to change, siphon that money out into the now young adult's own Roth IRA. So now your child that didn't go to college, or, hey, you got leftover money, you can begin moving that into their own retirement
Wouldn't
account.
that be something? You have leftover money after your kid got a 4-year degree or went to college.
Those are words that don't often go together.
No, that's not. I was like, paradigm shift. I thought you were going to say slowly siphon it off into a wedding fund. That's what I was expecting you to go with. So let's switch gears real quick and talk about, you had some interesting stats that you wanted to share on wealth building in homes, like home ownership.
Yeah, there's just so much out there right now about information and what's in the media and what's happening with, hey, is it better to rent? Is it better to buy? But there's so many stats out there that get overlooked on the home ownership side about what it means to be building wealth and how that can lead to a higher net worth in some ways that surprise a lot of people. Surprised me.
So what do you mean? Like what was surprising?
The number 10. I was blown away. So 10x is the average net worth difference as you start getting a little bit later in life of dollars between an owner versus a renter. And so it should become pretty clear. Hey, you own a home. Great. Of course you have more net worth because you own something. But it's so much more than that. It's that you own a home that's going up in value, so you've got some equity. Your payments are going towards something, decreasing that mortgage, so you're gaining more of that equity. But then also it just regulates things in life. You know, you own something, you have a mortgage, it's steady.
Yeah.
You've got a $2,000 payment. Well, in a couple years, it's still going to be a $2,000 payment.
Right.
Versus your rent, and it's every year. Well, it's $2,000 this year to rent, and the next year it's going to be $2,200, and then it's going to be $2,400. And so over time, that rent increase can eat into your budget, and if you don't watch out, that can start eating into what your savings goals could have been. Whereas that mortgage, hey, you keep that lower price for a long period of time. Now you've got more flexibility in that budget to be saving, to be living, to be giving. So you got a lot more options there.
Totally.
Yeah. And like you said, it provides a little bit more stability because let's say your rent goes up at one property and then you realize, well, I can't afford that. So you get up and you move. You're paying moving expenses. If you have kids, then there's, again, that instability. Maybe you have to change schools. Maybe there's a different transportation. Maybe you're going to different grocery stores. You know, there's all kinds of things that factor in that change when you don't have that stability that a home brings. A home brings stability. And it's not just financial, but it's psychological, it's emotional. And that plays into the long term, like you said. You know, that plays into the long-term focus of the person, their strength and their focus on being able to financially provide and focus on their finances. Whereas if you're renting, it's just, you know, it's always moving.
Yeah. So this is where I end up diverging from many of my real estate counterparts is the whole rent versus own conversation. So I won't contest what the numbers say, but sometimes it's just too often young people or even people in the middle age feel like they're behind the 8 ball because they haven't bought a house.
Sure.
But life circumstances have made not buying a home maybe the smart option. So what I mean by that is if you don't have a life plan, like you cannot, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plan.
Sure.
So I get that. We know we're saying this, you know, tongue in cheek, but if you don't have a plan, like, hey, I'm going to be at this job for the next 7 to 10 years. I'm going to live in this town. I'm going to live in this state for the next 7 to 10 years. If you are just passing through, the numbers also show then it makes more sense to rent versus to buy.
Oh, absolutely.
Because of the interest, the down payment, all the costs associated with it. The interest is front loaded on the mortgage payment. So you're paying primarily interest. You're primarily paying WF or Chase or US Bank. You're paying them, not building equity in that property. And so if you're only planning to be in an area a short period of time, it makes more sense to rent. So if you're hearing this and you're feeling, oh man, they're just talking about, home ownership on a show, like I'm trying to provide the other alternative, the other perspective as a real estate broker. And what I will say is what makes sense 100% of the time is buying an investment property. So let's say you are in the military and you're stationed here temporarily. Well, let's say you purchase a home, but then you know that at that price in this market that it will cash flow, meaning it will cover your taxes, insurance, interest, maintenance, property manager expenses, and vacancies. You got to build in some vacancies there. And after all those expenses are factored in, you're still money ahead every month. Then it makes sense to maybe buy that home. You're here for a couple of years, 3 years, and then you turn it into an investment property when you get stationed somewhere else. So as long as you have like a plan to own that property for 7 to 10 years, then it makes sense. But if you're just bouncing around and buying homes everywhere you go, then the numbers could paint a different picture. But long term, let's say you were in the military and you bought a home and you were stationed for 2 years and you moved somewhere else and you refinanced that, got the VA loan out, and now you get another VA loan in the new place where you're at, and then you keep repeating that process. That's where the 10X comes in at the very end, right, Chad?
Yeah. And well, truthfully, I don't love the idea of being a long distance landlord personally.
I'm with you.
But yeah, and I kind of even just kind of skirt that number down just a little bit too. The 7 year, that's great. I would even say 5. You start getting into that arena of it can make sense because you start recouping those costs, like you were saying, plus the value of the home. You tend to see those cycles moving up and down, but over a 5-year period, it's pretty safe to assume your home will have appreciated some.
Yep.
And so that can be very effective.
Yeah, I'm being a little bit more conservative on the numbers.
Oh, sure.
But what most people are like, hey, what's happening in the market now? What's happening now? Is now a good time to buy? And the answer is, it has nothing to do with what's happening right now. And it has to do with what's going to be happening in 5 years, 7 years. And as long as you have a plan that can weather that cycle, then it's a good time to buy. Which brings us up to what we're going to be talking about on the next segment, is we're going to be talking about rates. Everybody's hearing a lot about rates. Rates are going up, going down, staying steady. What does that mean for homeowners, and what does that mean for buyers? So we'll be discussing rates right after this.
Research has shown that there are 3 things people want when it comes to selling their home. 1, of course, they want top dollar. They want the most money possible. 2, they want it to sell in a timely manner. They don't want it sitting on the market for months and months and months. And 3, they want it to be an uncomplicated, simple process. And that's what happens when you work with Johnny Jennings and the Made for More Living team. They make it simple, they sell fast, and they get you top dollar. So if you're curious what kind of offers you would get on your home, go to madeformoreliving.com. Of course, you can always just Google Made for More Living. There's a reason why Johnny Jennings and the Made for More Living team are #1 in all of Sacramento. Google Made for More Living today.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by EXP Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
Man, Chad, have you been to Chick-fil-A lately? The prices there are just outrageous.
They're
It's
outrageous
crazy.
as they are delicious.
Outrageously delicious. I get the best prices on Sunday, though. Tell you what. No, did you hear? Did you
They're
hear
closed
that,
on Sunday.
Did you hear that they have some type of a thing where you can go and you can ask for their leftover foods?
Really? At
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A?
Yeah.
Baloney.
No, 100%. So you got to look up to it. There's some phrase that you have to say.
You mean before they're about to close?
or the morning or the next morning, and they'll give you like the old food for free.
Wow.
Yeah.
There
Not know
you
that.
go.
Yeah, so I think it's designed also to help like homeless people, but like anyways, there's some Chick-fil-A hacks. But just prices are going up. Interest rates have had an influence on that. Inflation is definitely a topic of conversation. It seems like, hey, how's the weather? By the way, have you checked out inflation lately? Like it's all lumped together in our daily conversations. But the number one question I'm getting from buyers and sellers is, hey, if rates go up, how is that going to impact me in the sale or purchase of my home Same thing. Hey, if rates go down, that's a good thing, right? It's gonna make it easier for buyers to afford, or hey, it's gonna bring more buyers to my home. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna dive into that really briefly. So as far as rates go, here's the seller benefits. Where they're at right now, if you are a seller and you're thinking about selling a home, rates are great for you right now because a lot of your sellers are holding on to their properties because they probably have 2, 3, 4% interest rates, and they don't want to trade those in for a 7% interest rate. So inventory is really tight. So it's classic supply and demand. If inventory is tight, demand is high, which means you can charge a higher price for your home. Yep. So that's
so interest rates is not a factor in those situations.
So what's happened? So eventually it could be, but what we've seen, and it's probably frustrating to the Fed, that home prices have not really come down. At
least not here in California, for sure.
At least not in our market. There are a couple zip codes where I've noticed them starting to slide a little bit, but by and large, I would say 90-95% of the zip codes that when I go on a listing appointment, if you check, year over year, the prices are up compared to last year.
Because there's a smaller supply, and there's enough buyers out there to support that.
Correct. Yeah. So if you're looking to sell your home, that's a good reason to sell, because if interest rates drop, guess what all your neighbors are going to do? They're going to come onto the market, and they're going to now be your competition. Whereas so many times, I would say at least 90% of the time I go on a listing appointment, that would be the only home for sale in that community or in that neighborhood, right? Maybe one other. I'm starting to see more as we're getting into the selling season, but only one other home. It's not like you're competing with 3, 5, 10 other homes. And so it's a very attractive time to be a seller in today's market. But you're thinking, Johnny, well, what does that have to do? What about buyers? Are buyers just, out of luck? And the reality is, because there's so few buyers and there's so few sellers, yes, sellers are still getting a great deal on their home. They're still commanding top dollar. But what we're starting to see more and more is that sellers are offering concessions to help buy down the rate for that buyer, to help affordability. So now, looking at it from the perspective of a home buyer, you're the only one maybe making an offer, maybe you and 5 other people. But if rates come down, it's going to be you and 10, 20 other people. More competition for that home. And so you're more likely in today's market to get rate buy downs, to maybe negotiate a slightly lower price, to negotiate some credits for the repairs on the home, so that way you can go in and you can change the countertops or upgrade the flooring or fix any of the things that need to be done to that home. So right now, it's really just a strong time if you have the pre-approval, and if you're able to afford it, to go in and buy a home right now, because then when rates do drop, because eventually they'll drop, they can't the rates fluctuate, they go up, they go down, they go up and they go down. Eventually when they do drop, man, appreciation is just going to go through the roof, because at the end of the day, we have a supply issue. There's not enough homes being built fast enough, and there's not enough homes, existing inventory on the market to keep up with the demand for home ownership, at least in our community. Yeah.
So you would prefer our current climate as opposed to rates coming down into the 5s or even the 4s, and then there's just all of this competition. You like the current real estate market that we have right now? You prefer this?
Well, so that's a different conversation. So what's happening now is that every time a real estate agent gets paid, the only time an agent gets paid is when a sale takes place. It doesn't happen when we meet with you. It doesn't happen when we show you 20 homes and then you decide, hey, I'm going to sit on the sideline. It doesn't matter if we get you all the way through the escrow and the buyer pulls the plug. It's only when a home sells. That's the only time a real estate agent gets paid. And there are fewer sales taking place than there in our community than there have been in the last 40 years. So there's fewer opportunity for paychecks for real estate agents. If interest rates go down, there's going to be way more opportunities for paychecks for realtors. But I'm not looking at it from my perspective. I'm looking at it from the consumer's perspective.
Right, sure.
So if you ask me, hey, do you want rates to go down? Absolutely. It's going to be on like Donkey Kong, and we're going to be selling a lot of homes.
Right.
We're going to help a lot of buyers with purchasing homes. But as far as a client, like right now, a lot of people are just nervous. The news likes to terrify rather than clarify. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people are just paralyzed, and they're worried what's going to happen with the market. But as we were talking about on the previous segment, it's not about what's happening right now. It's about what's happening in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And so if you can afford the home, if you have a life plan that makes sense for the next 5 to 10 years for you to own that home, whether you live in it as your primary or then you move out and you rent it, then now is a fantastic time to buy, because you are going to have more negotiating power than you will as soon as rates drop. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then you can always refinance down the road if you can handle that payment, right? Because that's what it's all about. It's about the payment.
Yeah. So I have we work closely with a fantastic lender. If you want to learn more, just go to madeformoreliving.com. Reach out. We'll give you our lender's contact info. He's one of the top 40 in the country within his company. It's a national company, so he knows his stuff forward and backwards. But some great programs that he offers is one of them is called the 2-1 buy down. So that's where you're able to get a lower interest rate for the first year, a slightly lower interest rate for the second year, and then you're at market rate for that third year. But the idea is that somewhere between that 2-year period, you are able to refinance into that lower interest rate and keep it forever. And so in order to help with that, they also allow you to refinance for free. So
oh wow, that's awesome.
So that saves you thousands of dollars right there when rates do come down. So the combination of the 2-1 and then refinancing for free is a huge benefit to buyers who are looking to buy now and then participate in the appreciation that's likely to happen in the next 3 to 5 years without waiting on the sidelines and paying rent and delaying that life plan.
So I'm curious what Chad thinks, because obviously we've heard from the feds that they don't plan to lower rates anytime soon with the current look of the economy. What is it going to take for rates to come down, in your opinion?
Unfortunately, it'd have to be a little bit of a weakening of the economy. So it has to have some softer job numbers. Things have to have a little bit of a worse outlook, so they have the right motivation to start moving things in that lower direction.
And there was a recent job numbers that said it looked weak. It looked like things were weakening.
Yeah, for the first report in a long time, it started to show some weakness.
Yeah.
And it shows, hey, that around the corner probability, hopefully that's still going to be a thing where rates start to come down later this year.
So when the Fed's raising rates or they're holding rates or they're keeping rates high, change the word rate to unemployment. Like they're trying to raise unemployment.
Right.
That's essentially what they're trying to do.
It's just a tough situation because somebody's eventually going to lose in this scenario, right? We want rates to go lower, but that's going to mean a lot of people losing their jobs. That's going to mean that the economy is going to be struggling. I know the stock market looks at it the other way around. They like it when interest rates are high, correct? Is that true?
It's a double-edged sword.
Okay.
There's certain investments where, hey, that high interest works to other people's advantages, and it works for savings, and it works for a lot of dividends in certain areas. But, yeah, when rates start getting lower, it can mean a lot of things for a lot of different companies.
Yeah.
So small companies, as an example, you invest in a small company, rates go down, that small company might now be more profitable because they have a better bottom line.
Sure.
So it
Interesting.
really depends.
Yeah.
It's very complex.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. It doesn't matter what Jerome Powell's doing. It matters what your life plan is. And so we like to plan here at Made for More, not what if, we like to plan even if. Even if rates stay high, even if this person is elected president, even if regulation doesn't change,
right.
How can we get you into the home? How can we sell your home and net you the most amount of money?
Right.
Yeah. So, so that's what...
Because I remember you talking, I don't know if it was a couple weeks ago, you had a client where you helped them purchase a home. And I believe you were helping them sell the home as well, but they weren't super comfortable with the interest rate. But because they were able to get all of these credits, it helped buy down their interest rate.
Yeah, so that's another option as well. So when we're talking about like getting a better deal from a home seller, that home may have sold for a record price, but what you may not see are the concessions that
right.
home seller made in order to make it happen. And so the 2-1 buy down that I mentioned earlier, that's just a temporary thing. You can also buy down the rate permanently, and many instances sellers are willing to offer credits in order to help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a huge benefit.
So then, that's a huge benefit. So rather maybe than dropping the price, because ultimately what most buyers are concerned about is the monthly. Right. Chad, in the previous segment, we were talking about, hey, the monthly is stable, the monthly is set. They're comfortable with the monthly. They don't want the monthly to move. As long as they can afford the monthly, the price ultimately is not their number one concern. As long as they can afford that monthly payment every single month, and they can still put food on the table, plan a couple vacations a year, take care of their kids, maybe put some money into a college fund, maybe not, depending on what it is they're looking to do. But it's all about the monthly. And so if you're able to, if the seller's open to buying down the rate and lowering the monthly expense for their buyer, then that's a win-win.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So
So it's not all bad news out there.
So it's not all bad news. If you're looking to buy a home, now's a great time to buy because you have less competition. If you're looking to sell a home, the converse is, it's true as well. So it really depends. As soon as rates drop, like if there was like a 1% drop, that would probably, like if people were trying to time the market, that would probably be the time to hop in the market, either as a buyer or seller, because not everybody else is pre-approved and able to move as fast. Right. But as soon as that rate drops and it stays, then it's just going to be, it's going to be insane for buyers and sellers. Yeah. So that's what we have on rates. Any final thoughts on rates?
I think you hit so many good points, and it's such a great and refreshing outlook that it's more about, hey, what works for that person? It's not about, is it the right time in the market or the right time in the economy? Is it your right time?
And it's funny, if you talk to older, more experienced investors or people that have worked in the economy or just people that have been around this planet a few more rotations than we have, people that are in their 70s and 80s, usually their response is, yeah, been there, done that. Everything usually evens out. We have our highs, we have our lows, and and that's usually how it is. And that's why investing is such a great option in your life, because that's just kind of how the way the economy works,
Things will go up, things will go down. Ride the wave.
Right, exactly.
Ride the wave, just don't fall. Okay, so don't go all in on Bitcoin.
Right.
Just
whatever
don't fall
happened
off.
to that?
Yeah. Oh man.
Did you invest in Bitcoin? Come
Nope.
on, Chad. You invested in Bitcoin.
I'm not a Bitcoin investor.
No. What? So that's done, right?
No, it's still around. They're still talking about it. Cryptocurrency. Yeah.
Okay, because it was really up there, and then it crashed, and I think Tesla said they were going to be a big investor in that, and then China, and then it got really exciting, and then all of a sudden it went away. Right? I had a friend who was just on social media on a regular basis saying, "You are insane if you are not investing in Bitcoin." He was showing the graphs of how much money he was making, and he's kind of disappeared. I haven't seen him on social media in a long time.
Well, yeah, some people made some money, some people lost a lot of money, but you know what? Like we were talking about earlier, the number one rule of investing: don't lose money.
Right.
And it's not me that said that. It's one of the wealthiest guy in the world. So
you don't think anytime soon you'll be selling homes on Bitcoin?
There's
right?
people are talking about that.
Oh, really?
Escrow companies are starting to try to figure out how to make it work, but there's the legality around it, like who is actually buying the home.
Yeah.
Like is it somebody that's allowed to purchase the home? Is it a country that's allowed to be involved in this transaction? So they're figuring that out. But hey, when we come back, we will be talking about real estate commissions. There's been a lot of talk about NAR and this lawsuit that has come out. And hey, a lot of people are thinking, wow, I don't have to pay my real estate agent anymore. Is that true? Is that false? Somewhere in the middle? We'll find out. Back after this.
Selling your home doesn't have to be a stressful experience, especially when you work with Johnny Jennings and the Made for More Living team. Just Google Made for More Living, and when you do, you can type in your address and find out what kind of offers you would get on your home, or how about this, how much you would get if you wanted a cash offer today from Johnny Jennings, no matter what kind of condition your home is in, no matter what kind of repairs are needed. Give him a try. There's a reason why he's number one in all of Sacramento. Johnny Jennings and the Made for More Living team. Just Google Made for More Living or go to madeformoreliving.com.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
So far on today's show, we've talked about what to do if you have $100,000. Like, how would you invest that with? And Chad weighed in on that with Thrive Stewardship. He shared about how if you're at this life cycle, this is what I do with the $100,000. If you're at this life cycle, this is what I do with the $100,000. And then we moved into, what about universities, how you would invest in your kids' future. Like, would you invest it in, was it a 529?
Yeah, so a 529 or a college account. There's other types, but yeah, just college specific or other.
And then we moved into rates, the almighty rate, and how that's impacting buyers and sellers in today's market and what that looks like. And then to round out today's show, we are talking about commissions, specifically the proposed settlement with NAR and what that has to do with realtors. A lot of people are thinking, hey, now realtors work for free. Now I don't need to pay my real estate agent. Now if I'm selling my home, I don't have to pay that buyer's agent commission. So we're going to dive into the weeds and really unpack what is exactly happening. And the answers might surprise you. So what happened was, to put the skinny on it, is this is a proposed settlement agreement. proposed settlement agreement. This is proposed. This isn't.
Why are you keep repeating that? We heard you the first time.
This is not even like done. A lot of people think this is over. This is done. It's a proposed settlement agreement, which received preliminary approval from the courts.
So are you saying that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I'm saying it is yet to be fully decided.
So it could be scary, could be worse, or could be better.
It has yet to be.
It's not as bad as it seems.
It's not as in stone as people make it out to believe. Like they're like, hey, like this is what's happening. Okay, a proposed settlement agreement and a preliminary approval does not sound very binding to me. I'm no lawyer, but that is very loosely worded. Okay, and what things are as we get closer. So originally, these changes were supposed to go into effect in July. Now that has been pushed to August 17th. So what changes are we talking about in this proposed settlement agreement? Essentially, what it boils down to, the nuts and bolts, is, and this is, I believe, overall a good thing, is that on the MLS, here I'll read it. This is exactly what it said. So it will eliminate and prohibit any requirement of offers of compensation in the MLS between listing brokers or sellers to buyer brokers or other buyer broker representatives. So what that means is...
I didn't hear a number in there.
Exactly. So there's never been a number. There's never been a uniform number. But what it essentially states is that on the MLS, you will not be able to put in how much that buyer's agent is being compensated when they bring a buyer to the property. Now, a lot of MLSs across the country have already done away with this, like prior to this lawsuit. But it wasn't like here, the MLS that we use in the Sacramento region predominantly is MetroList. And so in MetroList, you have to put in some form of buyer agent compensation on the listing. So the clients can't see it. It's not public facing. But on the realtor side, you can see, hey, I'm going to be getting paid 2%,
right?
2.5%.
Okay.
And so what the courts deemed illegal about that is, one, you're requiring the seller to put in something. Even if it's $1, you're requiring the seller to put something in there. And two, by requiring the seller to put something in there, you are now allowing agents to rate shop the houses. So if there's 3 houses on a street and your client's interested in all 3,
that makes sense.
And that's why I think it's a good thing. It's creating like a blind situation where it's like, hey, I'm doing what's best for my clients, not what's best for my wallet. Like, does that make sense?
Basically, this settlement would remove those numbers so that it would be blind.
From the MLS. It will remove from the MLS. Now, what happens on the agents' websites, what happens in conversation between agents, that is yet to be determined how those conversations are going to be handled. But that is essentially what it comes down to. Yeah.
So it doesn't really change anything. It just changes the type of information that's made public.
Correct.
Right?
And this is honestly like on a previous show, go ahead and look it up. We spoke with Paul Frank. And Paul Frank is a commercial broker here in the Sacramento region. And what he was talking about was, I don't understand. I thought this was how it's always been done, because that's how it's always been done in commercial. Where,
gotcha.
So the example he gave was a $30 million client. So he's representing a client that's selling a property worth $30 million. That client is paying him 3% of $30 million. That's $900,000 to facilitate this transaction. And they are offering out 3% to whoever brings the buyer.
Okay.
Another $900,000 on this $30 million property. And so a buyer came and said, hey, great, I like your 3%, but in order for me to bring my buyer to this deal, you have to pay me 5% on a $30 million piece of property.
Right.
That's insane. And so now the total commission had ballooned up to 8%.
Right.
And the seller was not comfortable with that. They said, no, you know what? We'll pay you the 3%, but it's up to the buyer, if you want the 5%, for your buyer to cover the other 2%.
Right.
And so now the buyer came in with the funds to pay their real estate agent a total of 5% on the deal. So what does that that's commercial, okay? So what does that have to do with residential real estate? Is the buyer is now going to have to commit, say, hey, I'm willing to pay my realtor X amount of dollars. Now what's probably going to happen is sellers will still end up paying that fee, but buyers are not allowed to go out and show people homes unless they have assigned what's called a buyer broker, a signed agreement saying, hey, I'm representing you, and this is what I'm going to do for you, and in exchange for these goods and services, this is what you're going to pay me.
Something like 2.5%, 3%, right?
2.5%, 2%.
Which would, no matter what the seller is offering.
So it depends. You can have it structured to say, hey, this is what the seller's going to pay me, or it's regardless, you know? Yeah. So, but the main thing is that the MLS is now removed, or is going to, as of August 17th, we'll see if that date changes, but as of August 17th, that field is going to disappear from the MLS.
Right.
So that's the main thing.
Yeah.
That's all it's about. So
I don't really think it really affects buyers per se, and I really don't think it affects sellers. Wouldn't you agree? I think it just makes it a little bit of a unique experience for the buyer's agent.
So what people freaked out when it first came out was like, how's my buyer? Affordability is already a challenge. So now you're expecting my buyer to pay for closing costs on their loan. You're expecting them to pay for the down payment on the home, and you're expecting them to now tack on an extra couple percent to pay for a real estate agent. Like, people can't afford to do that. But the
buyer's not really paying for that, though. It's the seller still paying for that, right?
But that's what their fear was, that if you remove it from the MLS, then now the sellers aren't going to offer buyer agent compensation. So now the buyer, if they're going to want to work with a realtor, solely represent them.
Wow, that's going to be crazy. I don't think that would pan out
I don't think it's
well.
I don't think it's going to work that way either, because the other thing too is, the other option is, I'll just work with the listing agent. Okay, great. I personally, like Johnny Jennings, will not dual represent both a seller and a buyer on the same transaction. That's like hiring the same divorce attorney to represent both parties. It never works out. It is not a pleasant situation. And so what we see happening in real estate is there's not going to be a big change, right? Buyers are still going to be buyers agents are still going to be compensated by the seller. Mm-hmm. I mean, Valerie just got a house in contract with a builder. The builder is paying 3% on $1 million home. A builder would not be compensating buyers agents if it wasn't in their best financial interest. So with that, we don't see a whole lot of changes happening, but that is essentially what's the changes that are going to take place, proposed on August 17th. Clear as mud?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Got it.
Yep. So hopefully had a great show. If you want to reach out or learn more about what's happening in the market, or if you have questions about whether now is a good time to sell your home, go to madeformoreliving.com. And if you want to reach out to Chad and get some financial advice, you go to thrivestewardship.com. Is that correct?
You got it.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on, Chad, and we'll look forward to next time.
Pleasure to be here.